Bartenders of Reddit, what was the worst first date you've ever witnessed? I was witnessing what seemed like a great first date. So while they started making out at the bar, he had long hair but a five-head and bald spot. His hat came off in the heated moment, and I saw the look on her face. I saw her weeks later, and she used the phrase, hat fished, and I'll never forget it. Still feel bad for the dude. He was super nice and paid for everything. Some old guy was describing some oddities of his childhood and why his kids and grandkids weren't raised to believe in Santa Claus, because he wasn't either. And this old lady just would not drop the issue, and when he gently requested that they change the subject, she started raising her voice, calling him spineless, useless, a disappointment of a man. And by that point I'd had enough, and just told her she needed to hit the road because she was being a jerk and scaring off customers. Told the old guy his tab was on me, and that I'd arrange for either a cab for him or for his date. He didn't take me up on it, just left me a few $20 bills, and they walked out together before he sheepishly thanked me. Another sad one. A guy showed up to the bar when it was a touch slow. I got him his first beer and noted he was dressed pretty nicely. Being the chatty guy I am, I asked him if there was a special occasion or something. He said he was waiting for a girl to show up for their first date and was pretty excited. Guy hangs out a bit at the bar top for a bit before milling around, comes back and orders some onion rings and another beer. Things got a bit busier, so I didn't keep close tabs on him, but then an hour or two went by and I noticed he was still there alone, and he looked a bit confused and saddened. So I asked him how he was doing. He said she hadn't shown up yet. Because I've been there, I got him a drink on the house and asked if he needed anything else. Hour later, the date finally shows up, completely plastered, and they walk up together to sit down and she tries ordering some shots. I know most bartenders in most places won't really stop themselves from overserving someone, but I told her, perhaps you should slow down a bit. Here's a glass of water and a free soda. She knocked both over, demanded shots. Guy was clearly embarrassed. They put in a small food order, and about 30 minutes later I saw him pouring her into a cab with a to-go container. He came back in, and we just chit-chat when we could for the rest of the night. Dan, I really hope you found the right woman for you. This happened to me once, except it was at a nicer speakeasy-type bar. When she eventually came in hammered drunk, she tried to sit on the stool and fell backwards onto the edge of the little dance area in front of the live jazz trio. Spilled her entire drink on herself and the floor. Thankfully, she was okay. I'm not a bartender, but friends with a bartender who told me about her own bad date. They make plans to go out, and she ends up driving the guy to the event. But before they even get there, he says he has to take a leak. They can't find anywhere with a public restroom, so he ducks into an alleyway to piss behind a dumpster. Then she hears him start swearing profusely. Wondering what's wrong, he finally admits he gambled and lost and has crapped his pants. She promptly drove him home with the windows open. Nobody talking. End date. I was bartending at a causal fine dining seafood restaurant on a Monday night. An older man, probably in his mid-60s, comes to the corner of the bar and asks me for a glass of our best red. I give him the wine list, and he selects the most expensive glass which he cannot pronounce. He tells me he's waiting on someone as he sucks down the glass. He pays for it and continues to wait. About 20 minutes later, he orders another glass and tabs out again. Roughly an hour after he got to the bar, a woman probably 10 years younger than him shows up. The man turns around and loudly says in a disappointed tone, "Wow, you don't look anything like your picture." She sits down despite his comment and orders a glass of house Chardonnay. I checked on them occasionally, but neither of them wanted to order food. Every time I tuned into what they were saying, I noticed that only he was talking, and it was mainly about all his surgeries. When a bar table freed up behind them, the man looked at me and said, "We are sitting here and I am having dinner." He stood up and sat down before she could even answer. When I brought menus over to them, he pointed at something random, and she ordered a small pasta dish. He continued to only talk about himself and showed her pictures of his ex-wife throughout the meal. She barely spoke. Towards the end of the meal, he looked at her and said, "Have another glass of wine." She declined. He replied with, "What do you think I'm going to do? Take advantage of you?" And turned to wink at me. She pushed her plate away and asked me for the check. Once the man said he was going to pay, she grabbed her purse and left. Was working a bar one weekday night. Woman comes in, orders a drink, and sits at the bar. On the opposite end of the bar, a man comes in, orders a drink, and takes a seat. An hour passes. They're sat in positions that block their view of the other. After an hour, I hear the man mutter, "F this," and put on his coat to leave. Heads for the exit near where the woman is sat. They spot each other and realize what happened. Personally, if that happened to me, I'd think it'd be very funny. But these two seemed annoyed with each other, didn't seem to talk a great deal, and parted after about 45 minutes. The biggest question of all really was, why didn't either text their whereabouts to the other? Ha 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 ha. Surely they had communicated beforehand. I was bouncing one night when there was a first date going on. Wasn't earlier than my shift start time. His date went to the bathroom. He went up to the bar, pounded a few shots, then attempted to grope a woman sitting at the bar. His date walked out of the bathroom as I was hauling him out. I actually knew the girl from several years back, only realized after the fact after she'd left. Her and her date seemed to get along okay at the start, but after about half an hour neither of them seemed to be talking. For another half hour they kinda didn't say much, looking at their phones a lot until the guy literally just got up and left. She decided to just take out her laptop and work on some Photoshop project for a while before heading off. Was a bartender for over a decade. Watched a guy leave the bar to use the bathroom. The girl he was with, first date, said to me, "How many times do I have to bring a date here for you to finally hit on me?" I told her I was engaged and have zero interest. The guy was on the way back from the bathroom and overheard her say that, proceeds to lose it on her in front of everyone, which is understandable, and they both scream at each other and leave the bar. That was their first date, and I have not seen anything worse since. This wasn't a bad date, but it's definitely a first date story I like to tell. Was tending an empty bar one night when a good-looking blind dude in his 40s with a seeing-eye dog came in. He sat at the bar, asked some questions, and I got him some wine. He was really friendly, and we were having a good time chatting. Told me he was meeting his date there, and then they were gonna leave to see a show. He then asked me, "Hey, can my dog sit at the bar?" "You mean, in a stool at the bar? He'll do that?" "Yeah, there was no one else there." "Okay, man, sure." He snapped his fingers and the dog, a full-grown German shepherd, hopped into the bar stool, and now both he and his dog were sitting across from me, all three of us on equal eye level. This was pretty entertaining, and I was having a blast joking with the guy. He then asked if his dog could have a beer. After a quick back and forth, I poured an IPA into a bowl in front of the dog, who housed the whole thing in about 10 seconds flat. 5 minutes later, the hottest woman I've ever seen walked in, said, "Hi, Jerry." He paid his bill and left with her and the dog to go to a jazz show for their first date. Coolest guy I have ever met. Think about him all the time. I was a bartender at a restaurant. A 13-year-old boy came in for his first date with a 13-year-old girl. His mom brought them. She planned on getting them seated at the table and then leaving them alone to come eat at the bar herself. The boy would not let her leave. The girl hinted multiple times about the mom leaving. The mom hinted about leaving too. He just ignored them. Finally, the mom says she's leaving to give them some privacy. When she tries to get up, the boy reaches out and grasps her arm and tells her not to leave. They all sat there awkwardly at the table. One of the servers heard the girl in the bathroom on the phone making fun of how weird he was being about not letting his mom leave then. Not witnessed but heard a girl and guy go on a blind date. They've been talking on the phone before to get to know each other, and here comes first date. Met at a bar. He was there first waiting and she came in. They talk for a minute and he says, "Oh, let me get the flowers I got you. It's in the car." He walks out and doesn't return. Felt bad for her. You can at least finish the date or drink and then gracefully leave. My own. I bartended a bar in between other things I had going on at the time, 25 plus years ago. A pretty RN from the local hospital would stop in after her shift. She eventually asked me out. On a free weekend, first date, we went to another bar that had a band that night. She went full Elaine, from Seinfeld, dancing. Like, people got out of her way to let her dance, which only fed her idea that people thought she was an awesome dancer. I don't think it was a first date, but it was the weirdest one I've seen. Once there was this couple on this date, and the guy, we can call him A, was super awkward, looking uncomfortable the whole time. His date, F, seemed relaxed. While they were sitting at the bar, one of her guy friends, call him B, came in and sat down next to them and started chatting her up pretty hard. She wasn't being disrespectful to her date or her friend while they all sat together. After some time, B finished his beer and walked outside to go home. The girl got up to use the bathroom, and A followed B outside to maybe confront him. B was built like a brick house, so it would have been a bad idea. After a while, A came back in, looking very distraught, and sat down next to his date. She asked him what had happened outside, and he deflected by saying that B was trying to screw her. She persisted for him to tell her what happened, and he finally told her that he fought B in the parking lot. It was hard for me to believe, because it didn't have a scratch on him. This made her furious at A, and told him he was out of his mind for fighting one of her friends, especially cause he was just feeling jealous. A couple minutes later, B walked back into the bar, smiling, as if nothing happened. He too showed no signs of being in a fight, and he sat down next to them at the bar, again. She turned in her seat and said to her friend that he shouldn't have fought with A, who was burying his head in his hands. B was taken back by this statement and peered around her and said to A, "You told her you fought me in the parking lot? You wouldn't be standing if you fought me in the parking lot." By A's reaction, I knew that no fight had happened, and he had made up a weird lie for God knows why. His date got a repulsed look on her face, and I walked over and told them someone needed to leave because there was too much tension in the air. I got up and walked out reeking of shame. It was truly painful to watch, and I usually get a kick out of the drunk and disorderly. Not a bartender, but saw a dude at the theater I used to work at. He was dressed up and had flowers for Valentine's Day. He sat in the lobby for over an hour and quietly came up to the counter and asked if he could return his tickets. A young couple, no more than 20. He ordered for her, red flag number 1. What he ordered for her was a salad, red flag number 2, and a nice big oof to pair with it. He ordered a standard meat and potatoes entree for himself. Before the food arrived, he went to the washroom, and she flagged me down, saying she was leaving and asked if she could pay her half. I told her no. He ordered everything. He could pay for it. She thanked me and bailed. Took him probably 30 minutes to ask if she had left, and I explained that she had, and why. And in the end, I got to eat the salad he ordered for her. I was next to a young couple around the same age recently at a restaurant. The guy asks his date what she is going to get. She replies, and he says something I don't fully catch about it being a lot of food. This girl just tilts her head to the side and goes, "Don't be that guy," in a disappointed, annoyed tone. It took everything in me to keep from laughing out loud. The date carried on, but you could tell she wasn't really interested after that. The food then comes and I hear him go, "Oh, I thought these would be bigger," clearly to try to fix things. The date lasted maybe 35 minutes total. It wasn't a date, but a guy celebrating his 21st birthday made out with an older regular. She had to have been in her mid-60s at least, old enough to never ask for her ID. The drunker he got, the more they talked. And then bam, making out heavily out of nowhere. I kind of froze up for a second. It seriously caught me off guard. Not a bartender, but I ordered some hot wings with ghost pepper sauce from one. As he watched me eat the first wing, he told me about the last guy who had ordered them. It was a young guy in a suit who was clearly on a first date with the girl he brought along. The guy boldly ordered the ghost pepper wings, trying to impress her, took a couple of bites, got up without saying a word, and walked off. After 30 minutes or so, the girl realized he wasn't coming back and angrily got up to leave. But the bartender had to stop her and remind her that she still had to pay for the wings. Witnessed a high school reconnection/date where the girl showed up before him, dressed to the nines and obviously still infatuated with the idea of the football star. He shows up in a wife beater and a ball cap, scruffy/balding and not at all dressed for a date. Now it's not a 5-star restaurant but a decent beach bar. She seems a bit put out, but the date stumbles along. I can't help but hover as things go from awkward reintroductions to attempts at conversation. She's trying desperately to convince herself this date is a good idea and he's a great guy, and it's obvious he's not. He's oblivious. Going on and on about how she'd make a great mom because she's a teacher. She replies joking, "Oh no, I love the kids but I get to give them back at the end of the day, etc." And he doubles down. She changes the subject of fishing. He says she can't really enjoy fishing. She repeats herself and shares a story about fishing with her dad. He repeats it's a man's hobby and she can't possibly actually find it fun. It just goes on like this and I can see she's getting more and more upset. At one point, he leans over and says something into her ear. Her face contorts in disgust. She says something like, "That's how you think this date is going?" He goes to the bathroom, still oblivious. This man, gotta hand it to him. She takes her chance and waves me over. 2 shots of Fireball and the check, please. I shoot over to her, shots in hand. She knocks them back one after the other and I start giggling. Can I just say something? She nods. This is in no way my business, but you seem really sweet and are way out of his league. She looks at me in shock and says, "Really?" "Yes, 100%. She decided to pay the whole tab and jetted off before he got back. He looked at me and the empty seats and tried to hand me cash. I waved him off saying she had already paid. His utter confusion was so precious. It's still my favorite awkward first date story. So uneventful but just chef's kiss. Couple walked in, couldn't get a table so they ate at the bar. Told me they were on their first date in random convo. Checked back at one point after they had a meal and a third guy was talking with them. Seemed like the 2 guys were just chatting over her. She was sitting in the middle. I thought they were buddies. Turns out they had all just met too. Original guy went to bathroom or something because when I checked back she ordered their tabs. He comes back. They both leave together. Later in the night I noticed that third guy still going strong. In the midst of him deciding if he wanted his tab or another drink, he reads a text before answering me and all of a sudden just says he will take another beer. Fast forward to last call, and I catch that third guy with the first date gal making out at the end of the bar, followed by him, asking me if they will tow his car if he leaves it here as he was going to ride with her. While some may feel bad for the original guy, I say he clearly dodged a bullet. I don't recall seeing either of those 2 first daters again. Not a bartender, but I'm a server. Also not a first date. This man was going to propose to his girlfriend of 8 years. Things went south as soon as I introduced myself. I work at a fondue restaurant, so it's common that people don't know it's a different dining experience from other places. Part of my introduction is to ask the guests if they've ever dined here before. The woman said, "No," and the man said, "Yes, we have. Ate here a few months ago." The woman then responded with, "That wasn't me." The couple chose to do our all-you-can-eat option, which normally takes around 2.5 hours. Ordered our most expensive cocktails and liquor on the menu. Throughout the entire dinner, she was asking all sorts of questions and asked for his phone numerous times. The man was still trying to tell her that it was in fact her. Finally, he gave his phone around the 2-hour mark. Turns out he was cheating on her with her best friend that was also pregnant. Her best friend had told her the baby daddy was that she was seeing, but the woman hadn't met him in person yet. But the father was actually the boyfriend's. She splashed her drinks, threw raw meat, and walked out the restaurant. When I dropped off the check, the guy basically confessed to me that he also cheated on her with her sister. Working at a fondue restaurant, there's honestly never a dull moment, but it was one of the most memorable. Not a first date, and I was the server. I asked the couple if they'd like still or sparkling water. The man decided instead to inform me that she had brought him there to sign divorce papers. I made the joke that he probably wanted a stiffer drink from the bar then. Not a bartender, but I went to a pub with my then girlfriend around 6 or 7 years ago. Guy comes in and sits down at a small table for two. Waiter brings 2 menus and a pitcher of beer with 2 glasses, even though he's by himself. It's obvious he's waiting for a date. Over the next 60 to 70 minutes, he kept checking his phone more and more. He ordered his food. He ate probably half of it. Around 90 minutes after arriving, he realized he'd been stood up and just started ordering what looked like Jack and Cokes. Powered through about 7 or 8 of them, while just staring blankly at the wall. He paid his tab, got up and stumbled out and walked down the street. Felt really bad for that dude. I've been bartending for 20 plus years and have seen a lot of bad first dates, but the one that will always stick out to me was the guy who had his mom vet his date for him. Like he was there at the other end of the bar, but she had to sit and meet his mom first. They were the only 3 people in the bar at the time, so it was super awkward. I pretended to watch hockey, but I was so intrigued I was eavesdropping the whole time. The poor girl seemed so lovely that she was too polite to just bail out of the situation, so she actually did it. I immediately knew something was off when she walked in and got stopped by the mom on her approach to him. The guy seemed so comfortable that it clearly was not the first time it happened. So weird. I saw an uptight dude with what amounted to almost a hippie chick. Our place had a thing where we would cut off your tie. If you wore one in the establishment, we'd give you a free drink. It was just something neat to do to say work time is over. Well, this dude was in a suit and tie. When I came over with the giant scissors, he freaked out. He thought I was joking, and she was laughing her ass off. He decided to take off his $150 silk tie, instead of getting it cut off. She thought this whole charade was the greatest thing ever. I did my usual spiel offering food and specials, and he was rather indignant, all but mansplaining to me how he's here with a purpose, which just made her burst out laughing again. They ended up getting dinner and more drinks. She was really into him for a while, or at least looked that way, but as the night went on, her body language definitely changed. I'd bust in with new drinks or whatever when they looked like they needed something. I'd make her giggle, and he had no sense of humor. It was such an odd pairing. Throughout the night, I did see him smile, and he was a handsome dude, but he was tight as a frog's ass. After about 90 minutes to 2 hours, they had worked up a $140 tab. He decided to close out. I give him the tab. He frowns. I already know I'm not getting a tip. He ends up tipping like $20, so about 15%. So not bad, really. At least he didn't pull out a calculator to figure out the tip. This was long before cell phones, much less smartphones. He seemed like that type of dude. So I did get a tip, albeit a small one. At least from him. His date left me a $50 bill and her phone number. Man, do I miss being young and skinny. X showed up to the guy's date, sat down while they were eating and introduced herself and started flirting with him in front of her. The guy had friends there, and they all could not believe it. You could hear a mutual WTF being said when she walked to their table. The X was pretty hot and was a Miss World runner-up. He left with the X LOL. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out the other videos we have on the channel.